Today we are going to discuss formal and informal language. Now you guys probably have heard these words formal and informal before. Formal we think is like fancy, informal, casual. So we have informal and formal language. And informal is more like the language you're going to use maybe with your friends in small group discussions, or again, in casual situations. So let's take a look. We have two friends who are talking on the playground. Ben, hey, how was the field trip? Sachi, pretty neat, dude. Like, the museum's got all this totally cool old stuff. So a few words here that are even kind of considered slang expressions are, hey, pretty neat, dude. Museum's got all this totally cool old stuff. So again, a little bit more of like a casual situation here. Now, on the other side, or on the other hand, we have formal language. Excuse me. This is the language that you'll probably use more when you are in school or other important situations. You use formal language, you're using words correctly. You're speaking in complete sentences. So from Jacob's report about the class field trip, let's look for the difference. On Monday, we visited the North Carolina Museum of History. We were able to visit many interesting exhibits about the history of our state. So again, describing the same thing, visiting the museum. But you can hear and you can see the difference in these two types of language. Again, informal and formal. So there's a little hint box down here, and it says that more serious occasions and fancy settings require formal language. So again, just thinking of like a serious occasion or maybe a more fancy setting. Formal language is also used to show respect for others, maybe teachers, or if you're in the workforce, your boss. So today we have to read a few examples, and we have to write either an F for formal or an I for informal. Let's take a look. At the museum, we saw a full-size model of the 1903 Wright Flyer. At the museum, we saw a full-size model of the 1903 Wright Flyer. Well, to me, this sounds almost like maybe something you were describing, like to maybe your principal or to your teacher, and telling them about what you saw at the museum. This is an example of formal language. It's written using complete sentences. There's no slang, and I can tell that it's more of a serious tone. Let's look at the second example. Man, I can't believe the model wasn't the real thing. Is this formal or informal language? Right. This is going to be an example of informal language. To me, this sounds more like a conversation between two friends. Go ahead and read the third example, and I want you to think to yourself, does this sound like formal or informal language? Right. Again, this almost sounds like maybe somebody that's describing the field trip, maybe to like a school principal or to their teacher, or maybe they're even writing about it. It's a complete sentence. There's no like abbreviations or slang used here. This is an example of formal language. Go ahead and read example number 4. I think that it's probably this word right here. The punctuation doesn't necessarily give it away, but when we say so awesome, that leads me to believe that this is an example of informal language. Again, it kind of sounds like maybe a small group discussion among like even classmates or friends describing that field trip. Go ahead and read the last example and make a decision. Is this formal or informal language? Right. In this example, again, it sounds kind of like describing the field trip experience, but I agree. I think that this is written in a complete sentence, and it definitely has a more formal tone to it. Maybe this is like a school presentation or like a project where you have to explain what you learned at the museum. Today you have 5 multiple choice questions. You are going to determine which situation or setting you would use a formal language for. That's for questions 1 and 2. In question number 3, you need to read and determine which is the most formal request. If we request something, then we are like asking for something. So which one is an example of the most formal? Then in numbers 4 and 5, you have to determine which situation or setting you would use informal language, that more casual language. Let me know if you have any questions about today's work.